I'm Harris Faulkner. You are watching the Fox Report. At the bottom of the hour now, we are going to give you the top of the news. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in Washington, D.C. to lobby against a U.S. deal with Iran over its nuclear program. Tomorrow, he's set to address the pro-Israeli group AIPAC before his big speech in front of joint session of Congress on Tuesday. How joint it will be interesting if the Democrats show up. Netanyahu is calling his trip a, quote, crucial and even historical mission as he tries to pursue the U.S. not to make a bad deal with Iran. His visit is sparking already plenty of controversy in D.C. A group of Democratic lawmakers say that they will skip the speech on Tuesday, what I was alluding to. And President Obama will not meet with the prime minister while he is in the United States. All this adding to some concerns that U.S. relations with Israel are reaching a new low point. Secretary of State John Kerry downplaying those concerns, however, saying the defense relationship with Israel has never been stronger.
President Obama has done more to ensure the security of Israel by the creation of Iron Dome, by the development of weapons that are specifically calculated to be able to deal with Iran's nuclear weapon problem, and the president has pledged that they will not get a nuclear weapon.
Let's bring our political insiders now. Live from Charleston, South Carolina, a little bit of a snowstorm kept him away, but we've got him via satellite. Pat Caddell, a former pollster for President Jimmy Carter and Fox News contributor and friend here on the Fox Report. John LeBoutelier, also our buddy, former Republican congressman for New York, and our last friend on the left, Doug Schoen, former pollster for President Bill Clinton and Fox News contributor as well. All right, Doug, I'm going to start with you on this. First of all, lots of mixed messages between what's coming out of the administration and really what reality is.
Well, this is really new. This is the first time that a prime minister of Israel has come to the United States, will not be received by the President of the United States. It is also the first time in my memory that a prime minister of Israel or any country will address the Congress of the United States in joint session with a significant number of the members of one political party, as you said, Harris, the Democrats not showing up, with a deal lingering with a deadline at the end of March. Harris, we're in uncharted waters.
All right. I said mixed messages. Here is why.
Sure.
You've got Netanyahu saying that no deal is better than a bad deal. Sure. And you've got the United States through John Kerry saying, no, we got to make this deal. It's a good deal. In fact, it's making everybody safer, including Israel and the United States. But then you have these other things that are happening. While we're talking with Tehran, here's just some of what Iran has been up to in recent weeks. Just today, we learned that Iran began delivering supplies to rebel forces which kicked out the pro-U.S. government in Yemen. The Houthis had long been suspected of being supported by Iran. So they finally got their first flight in with supplies just hours ago. Days ago, Iran test-fired more than 20 missiles in the Persian Gulf, including the mock sinking of a U.S. aircraft carrier, just to, show us, I guess, that they could do that. Back in January, more military testing. This time, Iran claiming they successfully tested 3 suicide combat drones. And in December, Iran's army successfully launched coast-based missiles. Systems Iran claims are its most advanced in at least a past decade. John, we're doing a deal with them. They're doing that.
I know. I think that John Kerry has a mission here, which is to get this deal done by March 24th, no matter what, because he believes, and I know John Kerry, I've known him for 35 years. I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him.
Really?
He's done a similar deal with Vietnam where there were secret side agreements, there was inspections that never happened, where we tipped off the Vietnamese before the inspection actually happened. That same dynamic is in this deal with Iran. Inspections that are not going to happen, side agreements that we'll never know about, Congress being cut out so they don't know what the deal is. The end point, I think, for Kerry is he thinks he can get the Nobel Peace Prize with his Iranian counterpart for pulling this deal off. And he thinks that's the capstone to his career as Secretary of State.
2 for this administration then, right? And you've seen a president who got 1, but he started more war.
He did nothing. And this one for a terrible deal that is going to hurt the world.
So, Pat, you just saw those things I was talking about that Iran has been up to. Legacy is what John is alluding to for the president and for John Kerry. Why in the world should the American people even give a hoot about that?
Well, they shouldn't, and they should be terrified by it. John Kerry is either the most disingenuous person or the worst fantasy artist other than the president himself. This is unbelievable to me. He says Israel has never been more secure. Susan Rice went out the other day and talked about how destructive the relationship is being. Susan Rice and Samantha Power, I think most people who follow these issues believe they are probably the least sympathetic people to Israel in the administration, went to AIPAC to reassure them of the president. Look, Iran, getting in bed with Iran, and remember the reason we're doing this. Obama has this incredibly dangerous and naive view that Iran will be our ally against ISIS. It is like getting in bed with a cobra. I mean, Iran is the leading sponsor of state terrorism in the world, and they are surrounding our Sunni allies are bananas. You know what? It's a complicated matter, but they are willing, when everyone else is saying, as the Wall Street Journal pointed out, what they've leaked to their friends, instead of stopping Iran, we are going to ensure they get a nuclear weapon, anything for a deal.
Yeah, you know what was interesting, too, that I read today, that the president is saying that it's actually made Israel safer, or the dealings with Iran has, because they've got the Iron Dome in place. So basically what I'm understanding, Doug, is that are we still going to try to keep them from getting a nuclear weapon, or are we going to try to shoot it down when it happens?
Pat is now alluding to the central issue in the deal, and I think for the viewers it's important to share what's happening. At the beginning of the process, the president had said, under no circumstances would we let Iran get the ban. Now, what we're hearing is that, well, we may go out 10 years, and then, well, they'll be able to go nuclear. But if that is the conclusion, and it appears that it may well be, that will lead, I think, John and Pat, to an arms race in the Middle East. The Saudi Arabians will begin building a bomb, and we could be in a cataclysmic state within a year or two.
All right, so this is the first time that you've seen on live television we're able to respond to all the news that was made during the Sunday shows. So here's what Secretary Kerry said to ABC News today. President Obama has done more to ensure the security of Israel by the creation of the Iron Dome. This is what I was talking about. By the development of weapons that are specifically calculated to be able to deal with Iran's nuclear weapon problem. And the president has pledged that they will not get a nuclear weapon. Aren't those two different things? Either if you're not going to let them get one, then why do you need all this stuff to fight it?
Iron Dome has been in the works way before Obama became president. Ever heard of the thing?
It sounds like Kerry wants to give him credit for it, though.
Of course. Don't believe a word Kerry says. He's a snake oil salesman trying to weasel this thing through, where they've already, as I said, and this is part of the problem coming on Tuesday, cutting Congress out of having any say in this agreement. This is why you have a bipartisan agreement among Democrats and Republicans in the Senate and House to put more sanctions on Iran if the deal doesn't go through, because they're being cut out of the thing.
Jeff Kaiser on Twitter has said, he says that the president has an addiction to legacy. What do you think, Pat?
Well, yes, he does. And the legacy is getting worse and worse by the day. No, but look, this is what I've said for weeks. You know, this president can only do so much damage domestically, and he's doing a lot. But he can make the world a dangerous and unsafe and eventually unstable place, which is what he's doing. And you know what? What was really bothersome to me is how partisan this has become. And it is a very tough issue for Democrats. The Black Caucus is boycotting because they think it's offensive to Obama that Netanyahu was here. The Obama, you know, and look, Boehner should probably not have invited him the way he did. But look, this is Netanyahu is coming to talk about the survival of his country.
What are the options? Because the deadline is the 24th. The election in Israel is coming up in a couple of weeks. It just so happens it kind of goes.
And a lot of Democrats who claim to have been for Israel all these years are now being tested of whether or not they're going to stand for their principle or they stand for their party. And I've never seen anything like the disgraceful partisanship going on here. These people can't touch anything. And by the way, Iran is making ballistic missiles that can reach far, and soon they will cross the ocean. What do you think that's about?
They're not part of the agreement, and you don't build an intercontinental ballistic missile unless you have a warhead that causes terrible damage. So.
You know, Pat made such an excellent point, and you know, I was asking just in terms of kind of how Democrats are looking at this. Senator Feinstein says he doesn't speak for me. He doesn't. She says that it's arrogant.
Talking about Netanyahu.
Yeah, that Netanyahu is speaking for the whole Jewish community. And then she says, I intend to go. I will listen respectfully. I don't intend to jump up and down while he speaks. So, Pat, you're right. I mean, Democrats are, she's going to go. She just says she's not going to like it.
I'm a Democrat, obviously, and support the party, its candidates. But that statement, again, doesn't make a lot of sense from somebody who's been a reliable supporter of Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu is a democratically elected figure. He does speak for Israel now. He's raising an important policy concern. Why call him arrogant? Why say you're not going to stand up?
Because I think Pat has a point. I think that Democrats are not quite sure how to come down on this.
I think that's right.
I mean, that's what you guys are outlining to me, and we have her comments there. Pat?
Well, and the other thing, remember, is that there are Obama operatives in Israel working with the administration's let's say, passive agreement for the opposition to try to beat Netanyahu. And they are really, and money is being poured in by left-wing Jews to do that.
I want to talk about that a little bit, because the White House has made a lot about the fact that the president isn't meeting with Netanyahu because it's close to the election. I remember earlier this year when they were going to meet with David Cameron, and they said, well, we have to move and hurry up with the meeting with the president because they have an election coming up. Look, they can get it done if they want to get it done.
They don't want to get it done. They don't want him reelected if they could help it. The relationship is not bad between the United States and Israel. It's bad between the president of the United States and his team and the prime minister. And I put 98% of the blame on Obama and his team from day one. They've gone out of their way to insult Netanyahu when he first came to the White House, Doug. When Obama got up and walked out and said, I'm going upstairs. And then he said, you can order from the White House mess. And they order food, and they discover there's no kosher food in the White House. This is a deliberate insult to Israel. And to go back to something hit me when Pat was talking. You go back to Ahmadinejad's re-election in Iran, 2010. Obama's the president here. And they slaughter all those protesters in the streets of Tehran. Remember how Obama wouldn't side publicly with the protesters? Already he was siding a little too much with Tehran, with that regime. And he's been pushing it that way the whole way.
We're looking at an alliance with Iran to go after ISIS, a deal that will be deeply, deeply troubling to the United States. We're betting on the wrong horse, that's for sure.
Real quickly, Senator Lindsey Graham is talking at AIPAC earlier today. He told the members he will move with others to cut UN funding and derail Iran's negotiations. So you've got Republicans that are looking at how do we combat this? How do we come back from this on that side? Then you've got the Democrats saying, well, do we show up? And if we do we just say we don't like it, a la Senator Feinstein? We got to go, but we'll get back to this in a moment. Lots of reaction on Twitter.